All right. Welcome back, everybody. It is our fantasy football podcast going on here for PredictionStrike. We have a special guest here, and that of Anthony Rooney, a scout for the Pittsburgh Steelers, former D3 All-Star, and that of football. And we're going to just kind of pick his brain a little bit on the Pittsburgh Steelers, what we think we're seeing this season. Maybe we're on the right side of things, maybe we're on the wrong side of things. And from my general understanding, it looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers are actually going to be pretty decent this season. You guys draw the 8th easiest schedule according to Warren Sharp, which I thought was very interesting as well, because your division is extremely difficult. I guess kind of walk us through how you guys attacked this offseason a little bit. You guys signed Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Washington. I think we'll start there because I know a lot of people are super high on Pat Freiermuth. What kind of impact does Darnell Washington bring in? I want to say it's the blocking game, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, Darnell, he calls himself the 6th offensive lineman, so pretty easy to go after a guy there, especially when we really want to attack the run game. Just really bulking our offensive line and our depth. In all honesty, Darnell probably could be another tackle if you really wanted to be. But, so draft, we were really looking for depth and, like I said, boosting up our offensive line. We got Joey, obviously, after signing Pat P. So we get, hopefully, Pat P in the future. He obviously said he visualized his game a lot off of Pat P growing up. So hopefully he's able to do that.
True.
Yeah,
true.
With Joey, obviously, his dad was a longtime Steeler. I think the media made a lot of that being the sole reason why you guys ended up taking him, or at least a huge part of it. But there had to have been a lot more. What else do you think played into that decision other than just the perfect media wet dream?
It's funny. We like to, you sort of know what you're getting into, a lot of family ties, like with brothers, like with the Watts. And obviously Joey comes from a Steeler legend in his dad. So we know what we're sort of getting and the type of player mimicking off what his dad was. But yeah, looking for bigger corners and stuff like that. Always, like, the game's adapting. You gotta be big outside. All those receivers now are 6'3", and all of them can run. So you just got to get bigger and faster outside, obviously.
Fair enough. So you kind of mentioned the running game here, which has been the main focus of fantasy football. Is what is going on with your guys' running back room? Because now we're all freaking out a little bit because we're like, Tank Bigsby's going to be the guy that's taking away shares from like Travis Etienne. We weren't really expecting Jaylen Warren to really be potentially taking those shares away from Najee Harris. Whereas it looks like that is likely what's going to be happening, at least off of one game sample size. Is there kind of any fruit to that tree, I guess? Like, what's really going on over there? Because, like, he got 6 snaps with the Stars, whereas Najee only got 4. The metrics point towards Najee supposedly inefficient, but, like, in an easier schedule means he's probably going to have an easier time running the ball. You guys improved the offensive line. You pointed out you basically have a 6th offensive lineman with Darnell Washington, so maybe some 2 tight end sets. Kind of what's going on at the running back room, I guess, is the main question here.
I would say the league obviously is not so dependent on one running back nowadays. As a lot of running backs are starting to obviously bring up the argument because they're not getting second contracts, is the carry load obviously is a big concern with everyone. But yeah, the game's always been adapting. So you're looking for, like a big, strong running back, and then you want to complement him with someone who's small, fast, like agile in the hole. So it's sort of like pick your poison, whoever you're going to play. If you're playing like a big defensive front, you obviously want a mauler that's going to be running the ball. Whereas if you're playing sort of like I'd say a 3-4 where they got linebackers on the outside, maybe you want a little bit more speed to be able to hit the edges. So it's stuff like that. Like, you're just trying to pick and choose.
Fair enough. So is it going to be more of a committee this year, do you think? Or is it going to be like a 70-30 split? Or what are we kind of looking at here, I guess?
I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, Jalen's different than Najee when it comes to size-wise. I'd say Jalen's probably easier in the passing game than Najee. But, again, Najee can catch too. He's built like a tight end. But, yeah, it's just trying to find like uniqueness in your offense, and I would say we're still looking for it, and obviously it's going to be continue to grow throughout the season. So after one game, I can't really depict what exactly what we're going to do offensively with the running back schemes.
Fair enough. Yeah. Kenny Pickett looked really nice.
Yeah, he did. That was a great first series to watch, really. He's been growing. His arm strength's obviously up. He's going to be exciting to watch.
Fair enough. Jackson, you got a
question? Him and George together?
Yeah, obviously, drafting both of them in the same draft class, they're going to have some chemistry there, just being around each other all the time, sort of growing together. So obviously, it's hopefully going to be a big season for those two. And looks like Deontay's back in game shape, and we might have a three-headed monster there. And obviously, we got Najee and Jalen Warren. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to ask, just like outside of the running room and outside of the highlight reel catches we've seen from Pickett, if you could just speak a little bit on any like outstanding preseason performances you have seen, in the Steelers camp or anywhere else that have caught your eye and maybe people might not be talking about enough.
I was going to say the Jets running back, Izzy Abanikanda, he had a really big game the other week. Obviously, he's a pick guy. It's weird now, though, since they just signed Dalvin Cook. So I really have no idea how they're going to utilize those running backs. They got legitimately 4 guys that probably could start in the league. Trying to think of who else. I'd say like Baker didn't look horrible against us. He's obviously a game manager. It's kind of tough, though. I don't know what the Bucs roster really looks like. They sat a lot of guys out against us, but it didn't seem like they had too many names playing.
Speaking of like outside talent, though, was there anybody in this past year's draft that you're like, damn, I wish we could have had him, or like we had our eye on him and it didn't fall to us how we wanted to, essentially? Or you like basically, supposedly Joey Porter fell. So that to a degree kind of fell in your guys' lap a little bit. Like, was there kind of somebody that you guys were potentially making to look there? Or like, I guess that's the gist of the question.
I would say that all the guys that we picked are definitely guys that were on our radar. Obviously, we traded up for Broderick. He was pretty big. He was somebody that was really attractive to us. He was a big athletic tackle. I don't know. That's a tough question because, like I said, we pretty much picked everyone that we had on our board.
So you guys knocked out of the park in the draft, basically.
That's what I mean. We'll see in a couple of years, but yeah, I'd say so.
Right on. All right. Let's see. The big thesis in fantasy football this year has been that George Pickens' ability to separate sucks, and that's why we're seeing all these amazing highlight reel catches. Like, he's got arguably the best hands in the league. But like Deontay Johnson has the inversion of that problem. His hands need work, but his ability to separate is phenomenal. So I guess out of those two, do you really see like George Pickens having this massive leap? Like, has his route running theoretically gotten better? Because we're seeing like supposedly like offensive pass interferences and stuff like that. Whereas Deontay Johnson got targeted like crazy by Kenny Pickett this offseason. Well, one preseason sample that we have.
That's it. Yeah, I would say obviously George has gotten a lot, like, I don't know how to explain, like, I guess matured in the offensive role and sort of figuring out what he needs to do in order to be a good player. And you could see that towards the end of the year, he was really catching on. Same thing with Deontay. Deontay's always working on his hands, but I've never seen somebody who's able to get off the ball as quick as he does, like literally makes guys look like they aren't even seeing him the whole time. But yeah, George's catching radius is ridiculous. He makes some out of world catches and it's crazy to watch on the sidelines.
His ADP just skyrockets every single time social media posts one of those things.
It's insane. Like, literally, it's one of those things whenever he lines up, you're waiting for him to make some ridiculous catch. And that's why people come to our practices literally just to see that.
Fair enough. All right. So kind of looking a little bit ahead before we dive into some like people you're liking from other teams for this year in fantasy, who are you like? I don't know what specifically you're scouting. Maybe you're just scouting all over. Like maybe you're focusing on corners, defensive ends, whatever. But like, what are you potentially looking at and filling in next year? Because the main thing that I've heard from my research is that like scouting never stops. You're already looking at the next class, trying to figure out this is a gap that we might want to fill. Obviously, injuries and stuff will probably placate into your decision making as it goes down the time. But who are you kind of already got in your radar? I don't think Marvin Harrison's going to fall to you guys. I'm sorry.
I think he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, so hopefully we don't have a chance of getting him. But, I mean, offensive line is always something that you got to improve upon. Like, no offensive line's perfect. Like obviously there's guys, age is always getting up there. I guess you could say like defensive line probably getting a little bit older. But yeah, it's one of those things like you got to sort of wait after the season starts to process more, and then you get a clearer idea of like exactly what you need to target in the draft. So I'd say it's like a wait and see type of game. But obviously you're looking at ages, and I
Stuff
think
like
the Athletic just came out with their freaks list. So it's usually their like most athletic, like most appealing guys that are going to dominate in the combine and stuff like that. So you sort of start getting a gauge on when you go on the road, like who are the guys that are going to be really good testers at the combine.
Are we going to see more designed runs for Kenny Pickett this year? Out of curiosity, because I know that was part of his game in college a little bit. We saw tiny bits of it here and there, but I don't think we saw too much last year.
It's one of those things, like it's hard to practice quarterback runs just because they can't get touched. So
Yeah.
Obviously we didn't see it in the preseason for the first game, but I would just assume quarterback runs have really never been a part of the Steelers scheme. So I would say no for right now, but you never know. There's always something different.
Fair enough.
Thinking of the scheme, we've seen Kenny last year ranked 28th among starters in air yards per attempt, and I know that was a lot of the complaint with Big Ben. Is last year was just a lot of little curl routes and stuff like that. Do you expect with a growing relationship between George and Kenny to see more looks downfield, or that number get bumped up a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the numbers don't lie. You guys said it. We're obviously looking to get the ball more downfield. Like Calvin Austin beat back. He's a great addition. He's our speed guy.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, exactly. Hoping, Deontay being back in full form and the pressure with George, obviously you're going to hope that team sort of scheme to either one. So that way it's going to be one-on-one coverage with some DB, whether it's with George, Deontay, or Calvin. So
fair enough. Did you guys pick up Calvin, by the way? Because Kenny mentioned this to me. I'm not sure if you remember him or not, but he was like, apparently Sauce Gardner said like Calvin Austin was like one of the only people like he actually had difficulty covering, which I think is interesting.
We drafted him 2 years ago. He was out last year with a foot injury, and he just was on IR the whole time. We didn't feel comfortable bringing him back early.
That's
wasn't worth the risk.
Makes sense. Will Allen Robinson be relevant whatsoever this year, or is he just kind of somebody to have?
That again, like he's going to be a slot guy, and obviously in the past, like with Big Ben, slots were the main guy that always got the ball. When you think of like Antonio Brown, Hines Ward, they're always lined up in the slot. So I would say Allen's probably going to be a big part of the team. We traded for him, so he's been looking pretty good in camp too. He's really evolved his game from being an outside receiver to an inside guy. So
True.
He's exciting to watch.
So during this offseason, obviously everybody made thorough moves. It sounds like you guys hit it out of the park with exactly what you want. Who would you say just screwed it all up? Like you looked at it and you were like, what are you doing? Like I know the big thesis at the beginning of the year was like, why did you take Jahmyr Gibbs at 12? That seems like an extreme overpay, and they seem very happy with it. So I'm not going to say the Lions, but like, who would you say is like, what are you doing, I guess, this year in the NFL?
I would say like the Raiders, obviously they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but like I felt like they had a lot of needs and they're really banking on Jimmy to be their guy. And obviously I'd say Jimmy's a great like emergency quarterback, whereas he's been getting hurt pretty much any time he started. Like if you look at the Patriots and obviously with the Niners twice, he's had season-ending injuries. So I'd say they probably had a lot of needs. They're probably a team that is 2 or 3 years away, which stinks because they just paid for a quarterback. So we're going to have to see. And I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to come back. So,
yeah, speaking of that, like it's interesting. Jonathan Taylor looks like he is going to play this year. But Josh Jacobs, it's starting to get that feel that like he actually is probably going to sit out because he just seems like he's, indifferent to it to a degree. He's like, I'm worth more, essentially, which is a big blow to the Raiders. By the way, just so you know, Grant's a Raiders fan. We were talking about how many wins he was supposed to have today.
Sorry, Grant.
You see what Aiden O'Connell looked like, though?
He looked decent.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a late round steal. You never know with quarterbacks.
He looks like the next Jimmy G, which I don't know if is the most necessary thing, but I mean, he looked good in that game. But
Fair enough.
They got my guy Michael Mayer, so I was a big fan of him coming out of college.
Interesting.
Good player.
Right. So I've got were there any teams that I guess you would say smashed it out of the park though outside of your guys? Like who did you think really did do a good job in the offseason?
Trying to think of all the teams now.
I think you guys followed the Eagles' approach of draft as many Georgia players as you can, and it tends to go well. So I think they did a good job with their two guys, and hopefully you guys do the same with your two. But
I was going to say either the Eagles or the Seahawks. Seahawks, Devin Witherspoon, that's a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Obviously, he hasn't been practicing. I don't really know what's going on there, but getting a guy like him, and then same thing. The Eagles
has also been looking great.
The Eagles having Jalen Carter fall to him. He was projected first overall pick, and they got him at 10 or 9.
They traded with the Bears.
Yeah, so
which I think it's just locker room stuff for the Bears more than anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to throw a couple names at you because these are guys that I'm super high on in fantasy this year that not a lot of people have been talking about too much yet. So some receiving profiles that I really like. Week 1 goes back to his hometown. I think he's going to be like a nuclear bomb going off, essentially. Like he's just going to go crazy. Jaden Reed. What are your thought processes on him if you've checked him out at all?
Jaden Reed. I'm trying to – what team is that again?
The Packers.
Oh,
out of Michigan State.
Yeah. The wide receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a speed guy. It's like with Jordan Love, though, I got so many questions about him. It's just we haven't really seen him too much. But, yeah, obviously they got Watson, and I get Reed's probably going to be the slot from what I'm thinking. So it'll be interesting to see how he's used because he was a return specialist in college, and that's sort of how he was viewed throughout the draft. And obviously using that speed is going to be something.
What are the main obstacles you see with Jordan Love over there?
It's like the questions with Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, we didn't see Aaron Rodgers really at all because Brett Favre was always there. And now when you think about the Packers, it's always been Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love's been sitting behind the bench and had 1 or 2 spot starts. And unfortunately for him, they're against the Kansas City Chiefs and I think another playoff potential team. I can't remember at the time, but
he looked good in that second half. I guess it was against Detroit or Minnesota. Oh no, it was against Philly.
Yeah.
So he looked good in that second half, but I mean that's again a small sample size. But the arm talent is certainly there. I mean I wouldn't be surprised if he has a great season. I also wouldn't be surprised if he has a terrible season. So he's just a tough guy to gauge, I guess, at this point.
That's the question marks behind him. But obviously the first round pick, I think they traded up for him too. So obviously you saw something in him that they're going to eventually grow into making him the starter, which now he is. So they're building around the team around him now. And there's a lot of pressure from being the backup to being the starting quarterback though. So hopefully he's able to flourish in it.
Do you think with regards to fantasy, like stashing away Jordan Love on your bench this year with a couple of Green Bay receivers might not be the worst move?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to stuff like that, it's the risk you take, obviously. But Jordan Love, I would say, is probably going to be a pretty good backup for fantasy-wise, especially if you get Josh Allen or somebody early and somebody with the potential of maybe getting hurt. He could take over that role for you. But, yeah, like Watson, I think for 6 weeks last year was the number 1 receiver.
Yeah, it was crazy once he actually figured out how to connect with Rodgers.
He's got crazy speed. So obviously you want to build a team off of getting rack yards, catches, touchdowns, which is all Watson was doing. So yeah, I think it'd be smart to stack up on some Green Bay receivers.
I think week 1 will be very telling for Love as well. He's going into Soldier Field, which I mean, the Bears aren't going to have the greatest defense, but that environment's going to be hostile. And if he can handle some of that noise and he balls out a little bit, it'll be a good sign for the future, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. That's Bears defense is all right too, so it's going to be telling how their offensive clicks when it comes to playing an all right defense.
Mm-hmm.
And especially after all that talk or smack talk he had in the offseason against the Bears fans.
It was terrible.
The Father's
smack
Day
talk, by
thing?
the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see if that comes to bite him in the ass.
Yeah. What do you think of the rookie quarterbacks that were selected in the first 5 picks this year? It was kind of interesting. Like, yeah, some people saying, well, the Panthers should have gone with CJ Stroud. Then the S2 scores came out. And then everybody was like, you can't touch CJ Stroud with a 10-foot pole. Brock Purdy's God because he had a really good S2 score. Anthony Richardson's the next generational talent of all time. But there's some consistency concerns I personally have there. What are your kind of thoughts, I guess, on those guys?
I mean, they're like Anthony Richardson to me is the only one that's sort of proven that he's going to have a decent team around him. Panthers right now, they got a little bit of a question mark with the offensive line. If you're in a fantasy league that obviously has like negative points for sacks and stuff like that, I don't know if it's a risk willing to take, especially with rookie quarterbacks because they tend to hold on to the ball a lot longer than seasoned vets. But yeah, rookie quarterbacks are always something like maybe you stock up late in the draft and sort of hope that you get away with it. But it's hard, especially with like the Texans and Carolina. They've been bad for a couple of years in a row. You just don't know if they've really taken a step up or not by taking the quarterback.
You think Stroud and the Texans have a chance at not bottoming out that conference this year like they're projected to do?
Well, they're other than like the Jaguars, that conference is pretty much up for grabs. And I mean, Jaguars, they've always been a team that excels at some point and then always lets you down. So I don't know. I'd say that division's pretty much up for grabs at this point, but we'll see. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence takes a step and sort of takes over that division like he should.
Speaking of kind of not taking over the division, but your division rivals to a degree, the Cleveland Browns, they got Deshaun Watson. He's actually playing this season. You saw a tiny bit of him in preseason. Does he look like he's kind of back in form to you? Are they a bit of concern from like what they look like on paper? What's your opinion on the Browns this season? And I guess everybody else in your division to a degree as well.
Well, I'd give Watson a break just because it's tough. He didn't play for 2 years and then getting thrown into the middle of a season with a new team that he wasn't really a lot of practice around from training camp till whatever it was, I think week 10 or something.
Yeah, he didn't get to practice with them until week 12.
So you really can't build any chemistry there. And at the same time, like the team's a totally different team from training camp till week 12. Like you got injuries, offensive line schemes changing and stuff like that. So you got to cut him some slack. My dad's a Clemson guy, so I was always a Clemson fan. Deshaun Watson was my guy. But he's just one of those guys, like he wanted the ball in the fourth quarter, and that's always something dangerous, like a guy that's got a whole lot of confidence in himself. And obviously they got Amari Cooper. They got a lot of good receivers. They've sort of bulked up the team for him. So Browns are obviously going to be a dangerous team. Ravens, they're always a tough team. Harbaugh I'd say is pretty similar to Coach Tomlin. He's always got his team ready to go, ready to play. They're always in it. Even though Lamar has gotten hurt the last couple of years, they always seem to be competitive, and they made the playoffs with Jason Huntley. So not Jason Huntley. I was thinking about running back.
Yeah, Tyler Huntley.
What
do you think of Todd Monken, though? He's 25-38 as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And everybody's looking at what he did in Georgia and is like, well, they're going to be amazing. Lamar has a very good argument to be the QB1 in fantasy in theory because of the increased pace of play, the receiving core that's around him. But I look at a losing record, and perhaps it's just me looking at numbers too much. But I feel like that's almost like a weird thing because you see consensus as all like the Ravens are going to be the winners of that division or whatever. And it's like, well, Steelers are still pretty dang good. They've got a phenomenal defense. The Browns look really good on paper, at least. You do have the question about Deshaun Watson, which I think he's fine personally. And then you look at it and you got Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who I do think have some questions now the more you look at them. But, like, I don't know.
That's it. Like, it seems to me like the Ravens are trying to move away from being such a run-heavy team. Like, they apparently moved Ricard to guard, which he was always like he'd be in on third down, and it'd be 3rd and 10, and they'd have a fullback in, and with the threat of running the ball, that always kept the defense on their toes. So it's going to be interesting to see that Lamar be maybe in shotgun a lot, maybe not using his feet a lot. It's going to be more passes, more RPO stuff. So we'll see with that. But Joe Burrow, obviously the calf strain, that's going to be tough. He's going to be going right into week 1, pretty much no practice, no running or anything for 3 weeks. They started out slow last year, so we'll have to see about that.
Interesting. All right. Trying to think of anyone else that's particularly interesting in the league right now. Justin Fields, the phenomenon with him right now. The big concern is everybody wants to point towards his deep metrics and go, he sucks. He can't pass the ball whatsoever. But then you look at his last 8 games, you notice he had an 83% on target rate, which is the highest in the league. And you're just kind of like, is people overreacting to this, or is it like the Bears are going to be the Bears essentially, and just severely undergo expectations?
I think it's, when you look at the Bears, I think it's like the Cowboys' little cousin. People just get so sick and tired of hearing from Bears fans and like just seeing them on talk news radio and stuff like that. But obviously the Bears, they invested in Justin Fields heavily this offseason. They got him DJ Moore. The Cole Kmet, he solidified himself as a solid tight end in the second half of the season. Obviously, they got some questions with Chase Claypool, but they got Darnell Mooney, who's shown that he's a pretty good receiver too. So I would be more on the optimistic side for Justin Fields. He obviously, like was mentioned before, really worked himself into becoming a good quarterback towards the second half of the season. That's always what you want to see with a young quarterback, is him growing and taking the next step.
Fair enough. All right. And then Danny Dimes, kind of somebody on the opposite end of that spectrum. Like, he actually looked really good from an advanced metrics standpoint, and now he's got Darren Waller. I like Paris Campbell. I want to hear your thoughts on Paris Campbell, see if you like if he's worth it, or Darius Slayton, because I think Isaiah Hodgins is okay to a degree, but they're not, the money's pointing towards Paris Campbell and Darius Slayton.
It's funny, like Danny Dimes was a decent fantasy quarterback last year just because he obviously is underrated when it came to running the ball, and he can throw too. They didn't have a solidified receiver at that time, so it'll be interesting to see how they sort of, I guess, move on with their offense when it comes to Darren Waller, who is obviously probably one of the best tight ends in the league, especially for fantasy. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use their offense, and obviously getting Saquon back is going to be a big deal. He opens things up for them in play action and stuff like that. But yeah, I would be optimistic about Danny Dimes too. I think I picked him up in one of my leagues last year, so he was decent for being a injury quarterback. If I had a guy get hurt, I had no problem putting him in.
Fair enough.
And I swear every year is Paris Campbell's season, by the way. I think before every season, people talk about how it's his breakout year, and then he either underperforms or
Gets
the ACL happens or something. Yeah, and
something happens.
Delayed again to next year.
He's another guy. He's a speed guy. So, like, he obviously is somebody that's going to get the deep ball and open things up for obviously Darren Waller, or Darren Waller is going to open things up for him. So I'd be skeptic about him just because, like we said, I don't think he's played a full season yet.
I agree.
Some people are I go on live stream every single day and talk to plenty of people and try to give them my personal fantasy advice from what I see from being a data nerd more than anything, and try to hibernate that with the other things I see. And people are now trying to make the argument that Bijan Robinson will not be relevant in fantasy this season in an Arthur Smith-led system. And I look at that and I go, I think he's the number 3 on the depth chart, and it's not really relevant, so to speak. Like, that's not something I'd be too concerned with. What do you think about that? Also, I'm sending you a mock draft invite, so you can go ahead and join that when you have time.
Okay. But that's what it's tough with preseason, because obviously depth charts aren't set until after the last one. So Bijan was the best running back in the draft. He can run, he can catch. The only thing is they got Patterson, and he was heavily relied upon for that offense last year. And he's obviously getting a little bit older, so it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize both those guys. And Patterson has a wide receiver background, so maybe they'll move him out more into the slot or make him an H-back. but I wouldn't read too far into it with Bijan. I think he's going to obviously be the starter. If it's not week 1, it's going to be within the first 5 weeks of the season.
Fair enough. And then do you think Jahmyr Gibbs, to a degree, is essentially the wide receiver 2 in the Detroit Lions offense? Because I look at Marvin Jones, I go irrelevant. Denzel Mims, irrelevant. Sam Laporta, rookie tight end. I think he might have a better shot at being more relevant.
I mean, you have Jameson eventually, but yeah, that's obviously been delayed now. But
yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, was just as good as Bijan. Obviously, like you said, he can play slot if he really had to. He had really good hands coming out of college, and he's a speed threat. So I think he's somebody to watch when it comes to screen games. And obviously Jared Goff is not a deep ball thrower. So I think Gibbs is going to fit perfectly in that offense. Now people will question probably because DeAndre Swift didn't really get the ball and stuff like that last year. But I think now that Gibbs is going to be solely the number 1 running back, I think he'd be a safe bet too to take in fantasy if he really had to.
Fair enough. I'll let you get in this mock draft here for a sec. Then we'll launch it into our Discord to fill up the rest of the room for us. But the comp that I've been giving them is Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara from Alvin Kamara's rookie season. I feel like that makes the most sense.
It seems fair.
Yeah.
Wells, you think you could send it into the Discord? I just don't want my Wi-Fi is so bad I don't want to disconnect again.
You're good. I'll make sure to send it in there, and that way we can make sure Rooney's in here, so we don't have the horde of people stealing spots.
Cool. Yeah, and I didn't. Well, you told me we weren't going live this week, so I didn't send it out in advance.
No,
but
it's all good. That's on me.
Cool.
Didn't want to throw Rooney to the wolves with all the random people going, "Can you pick it? Can you pick it?"
I know.
Do you guys get a lot of viewers?
Yeah, so I just go in there every single day and just answer people's questions. They're like, why is this person top 10? Why is this person not top 10? And I just do a lot of retention rate data and stuff like that. So I average about 200 to 300 people on TikTok live per day.
Yeah. And we pretty much just started doing our recorded form stuff like this. So this is only our second fantasy football podcast that we're posting, like probably one of 10 overall that we've done. So
yeah, we're getting more into that realm. So thank you for being our first guest. It truly is a privilege to have you on here.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man.
I think I'm on.
Think you're on. I see us 3 in here. You have to claim a spot.
Oh,
I'm taking the 9th spot because the draft order just got released in one of my other leagues. So I'm going to be the 9th pick.
Perfect.
I'll take the 2nd.
But all right. So I'm going to send that out to the Discord and getting them in here.
We're just doing the first round, you said?
We're just going to go through the mock in general, and then I'm going to tell them that, like, if they have specific questions, maybe they have something different than I do.
All right.
So we'll see how long that takes to fill. If not, we can just do robots. But I'm trying to think of anything else. The Buccaneers look like they're going to be abysmal this year, and I'm going to live on that hill. And I'm also just don't think that the Dolphins are going to be good. Like, I don't think they do well against press coverage.
Shut up, Wells. Come
on. I've always been a Dolphins hater, so just from growing up in South Florida. Oh, let's see. They were better when Tua was playing. It's just when Tua wasn't playing, they were a completely different team.
Cold weather starts and they don't know how to react.
It's funny, like people don't think like that affects teams, and it really does. Like moving to West Coast times and stuff like that too.
I think it more so affects that. I feel like they have a big advantage at home when the season starts, because that game against the Bills last year, you could tell they just gave them the sun sideline and were just burning them, and guys got really gassed in that game.
No, I agree. Like it's funny, like the people don't notice the amount of thinking that goes into stuff like that. Yeah. It's like, what can we do to slow this team down? We can grow the grass a little bit longer, or it's like little things like that.
The teal doesn't hit the same in -10.
Yeah. That's what Green Bay's always had no field
thing you got to take into account the most. Isn't altitude what you got to take into account the most? Like when you're doing external factors like that?
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing.
Especially like going into Denver. We used to have, like, Ryan Clark was a great player for us, and he couldn't play in Denver just because he had altitude problems with. That's just the way his body functioned. So it's like stuff like that. Like you don't realize how much that could affect a person.
What do you think of the Texas Coast offense? Does that have any inspiration for you? I think this is the final year the Cowboys can be somewhat relevant.
I don't. It's like Dak Prescott's just always been the question mark there. So it's when he's played really good, they can be a really good team. But when he plays bad, they're a below average team. And obviously losing Zeke is going to affect them. I know Tony Pollard did a great job last year, but I mean, he's coming off a broken foot. You never know how long that takes to heal for a running back.
What do you think of Derrick Henry this season? Do you think he defies the odds, or is he I think he's about to hit the age cliff / carry cliff and just fall off a bridge, essentially.
Well, that's it. Like early on last year, it looked like he hit that cliff and then he sort of turned it on. But they're another team. They got a lot of question marks, especially with quarterback. I don't know if Tannehill's going to be their guy. Obviously, they got a QB competition between Levis and Willis right now. So they got a lot of question marks in that team and totally rebuilt their offensive line. Derrick Henry would be kind of a risky pick, in my opinion. But, I mean, he's proved me wrong before.
Fair enough. I just look at him like he's the 1,800 carry mark is the study that I referred to, and he's at 1,750 right now. So I look at it, I'm like,
yeah, he's getting.
I'm confident in taking that stand this year, and I like Tajay a lot as a prospect. I thought he was underrated, albeit the main thesis against him was no ACLs.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but he had that huge.
That's a pretty big thesis.
Yeah, but that's like the same one with Zamir White, which might actually be relevant this year. It looks like.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out for them. I think they're just buy now and sell quick. They're probably not guys you want to hold on to too long. Let's see. I think we might just turn these into robots here just to make this easier on you.
Okay.
Because, yeah, it looks like the Discord is dead today. Oh, well.
Yeah. Also, I just got exited out of it. Let me try to get.
You're good.
Yeah.
I'll share the screen here, throw up Sleeper, so we can all see how we're doing with this. And I'm going to go ahead and start. I'll give them a few more minutes to trying to think if there's Desmond Ridder. Any sort of thoughts there, as in is he going to be relevant?
That's another, like, he started late in the year. He obviously showed some ability better than Mariota was. I think they got a good offense around him. So he's got a receiver, and he's got obviously Bijan, and he's got Patterson and Pitts too. So I think he's a sleeper pick for sure. He's a wait and see guy.
True. Trying to think if there's anyone else that's particularly interesting.
Sam Howell.
That's another one. I don't know if they'll go with Sam Howell over Brissett. Brissett's been a guy who's proven he can be a sort of a gap quarterback and can do it effectively. Like the Browns were a pretty good team with him.
Mm-hmm.
They had to play Deshaun because they paid him so much money.
Yeah.
But we'll have to Sam Howell, he was good out of college, but again, you'll just have to see if he really wins that starting spot or if they're going to make him earn it.
Yeah.
I was also going to ask you before the draft started about what you think about Kadarius Toney this year.
Well, he's hurt right now, so I don't know if he's going to be back in time for the opener. The Chiefs' offense is another. It's like if it's not Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, they have spot games where like he'll go off for 15 points one game, or he'll have like 2 points in another game.
Too tough to predict.
Yeah, it is.
Because
Because like they've replaced Hill with 3 receivers with all the same skill sets. So
Yeah.
All right. We'll get this going here, and then I'm sure I'll have some guys to annoy you about as we go through this.
sweet.
So first pick is going to be Justin Jefferson right off the board. See what you go with here at number 2.
I'm gonna go with I'll take Austin Eckler.
What?
He's
Interesting.
a guy on a contract year. He's got a lot to prove. Can catch, can run. They don't really have a number 2 running back to compete against him. So
Interesting. I don't know. I'm not a full believer if I believe that Kellen Moore is actually a good offensive coordinator.
I guess we're going to see this year.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. I think Joe Lombardi's a bit underrated to a degree. Just because of what he did do with Justin Herbert to a degree, and basically Drew Brees. But it looks like we got somebody
right now.
Something's clicking.
Yeah, something was clicking.
Might have just been how I was leaning. So I'm obsessed with Bijan. That's a guy I'm going with at this position. I don't mind paying the premium on him. I just think he's too damn good.
Okay, so here I want to go. I think I want to go Saquon. I would normally go Saquon here, but maybe I would go with the receiver like Amon-Ra or CD or something, maybe. But yeah,
what's your thoughts on Cooper Kupp, Rooney?
It's going to be an interesting year because the Rams had a weird season last year, high expectations, and they just had a ton of injuries that really bugged them. I think Stafford's going to be back. He's got something to prove now that, they obviously had an off year last year. Kupp's the guy, though. I mean, I don't care how old he is. Receivers can still dominate into their mid-30s, really. So I wouldn't be too worried about him.
True.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go position here to go hero running backs because I like Nick Chubb. So I'm going to
dual hero RB. I like that. See what Trev goes with here. Took the risk on Josh Jacobs. I would not have done that. CD's falling in this draft. I'm a big believer in Tony Pollard this season. I'm also going dual hero RB.
As am I. I love Tony Pollard this season.
What's Grant going to go with here?
I think I got to take Garrett Wilson.
Interesting. You think Garrett Wilson's going to thrive underneath Aaron Rodgers over there with the Jets?
I do. I
mean, I think
the potential's too high to pass up on. I think you could get an explosion of a season from him, and I just don't want to miss out on that.
Fair.
Can take Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I like.
Always good to get a quarterback that's solidified and can run and throw and has a bunch of targets. So I think Jalen Hurts is a safe pick there.
They're going to be a fun team to watch this year. I don't think they take any steps backwards.
I'm not going to go with boy Najee there.
I was about to say I got to. Can't go wrong with him.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to see how he plays out this year. I don't know. That was just such a weird way to go about splits. Basically, what you're saying, it almost sounds like you guys are, I'm not going to say more concerned, but like more focused on, trying to think of how to say this properly. Like making sure that Jaylen Warren could be up to the task if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose. And then the second running back is you're comfortable with them starting. And obviously Jaylen Warren would be a guy you wouldn't have any problem starting if he really needed to.
Fair enough. What did you think of Sean Payton's remarks towards Sir Hackett over with the Jets?
I mean, obviously it's tough. His predecessor, I don't know. It seemed to me like he had some beef with him. But I don't know. Sean Payton, he's a go-getter. He's a proven coach. Obviously, he's mad about how things worked out with now his team. So he's obviously going to talk a lot of crap and let the people know that this is going to be a different ball club than it was before.
True.
You can tell that with a lot of his preseason rules too.
Yeah, that's how it was with New Orleans too. They're a military-based team, and they've obviously had a lot of success with it. So he's going to carry that on.
I like Justin Fields more than Lamar Jackson this year, personally.
Why's that, Wells?
I think he's going to take the leap forward. Easy schedule for rushing quarterback, I also think just works. Like, it just makes too much sense to me. But I could be wrong.
This is tough.
Let's say receivers got kind of dried up there.
Yeah. I'm just gonna take a leap and take Jerry Judy.
Damn, Otto's taking away DJ Moore.
What do you think about Jerry Judy versus Cortland Sutton in the wide receiver target share competition over there in Denver, Anthony?
I like Jerry Judy better for fantasy wise, just because he's a slot guy and Russell Wilson's always been sort of a check down guy. I'd say Judy's going to be more available than Sutton. Sutton's obviously going to get a lot more big balls, but I think Judy's going to get a lot more receptions over Sutton.
You don't think Sutton's the next Michael Thomas?
Slant boy. I mean, Michael Thomas was an effective fantasy player being known as slant boy, but I guess we'll see. He obviously has the capability of doing it, and Sean Payton loves his slot receivers. So,
are we fading Miles Sanders this year, or are we taking?
From what Rooney was saying, it sounds like it. It sounds like they have more offensive line issues than I guess we initially thought. Because it sounded like he was going to be a 3-down running back with a pass catching upside, similar to his rookie season.
What do I do here?
I was in an interesting spot there with Lawrence getting taken and then having to lean quarterback later, but I'm going to trust your gut on Deshaun and say last year was a fluke.
That's fair. Damn you for taking Darren Waller, the one guy I need this year. I'm way overweight on him.
Yeah, I'm overweight on him because of you.
I just think he's going to be phenomenal this year.
The injury problems with him are just heightened because of the inability to take painkillers, which is obviously a positive for him in his life, but it makes him getting back on the field really difficult.
I think I'm just going to punt the tight end position here and go with. It was interesting. Apparently, Christian Kirk wasn't playing in 2 wide receiver sets this past weekend, which fantasy analysts are now freaking out about because they're like, Zay Jones is now the wide receiver 2 over there. And it's like you look at the amount of money that Christian Kirk's being played, and you're like, I don't know if I can fully believe that.
That's what they got Ridley too. So
yeah.
I've heard good things about the Jaguars system in terms of fantasy output for wide receivers. But I don't know too much about it. Can you guys speak on that at all?
I mean, last year with guys that hadn't been super fantasy relevant in the past, I feel like they did a great job with making Christian Kirk and Zay Jones viable options. I mean, Zay Jones is probably more of a every now and then stream kind of guy, but Christian Kirk was very solid all year, and I think a lot of people see Ridley as a guy with much more talent than him. So if you see what they can do with Kirk, then you can only imagine how things will go with a better guy in there.
For sure.
I was wondering where Deontay Johnson was.
I was going to say, I was shocked his name was there.
Like, I was looking around, I'm like, I feel like this is not really a range I would see somebody I like clicking on. And I guess the ADP just has him way too low.
He snuck down there somehow.
Yeah. Like Mike Williams falling back to me is kind of interesting here, but it's also like I could go with JSN. What are your thoughts on Geno? Do you think he's going to be able to repeat last year's success over in Seattle?
It's hard when you're talking about a guy that was on a contract year, obviously playing for money, and he was playing for a starting job as well. But I mean, he took that team that was pretty much defeated from Russell Wilson and all that, and sort of gave him some hope. And that was a damn good offense last year. So I think adding Smith and Jigba is going to be a big part to the team. They got Locke in the slot. They'll have him outside, and then they'll have DK. It's going to be hard to match up against those 3 guys.
Yeah. You think the contract year debate holds that much weight?
I think it gives guys extra motivation.
Yeah.
Always looking back at it, like you look at baseball, that's a huge factor in baseball. A guy that's always on his contract years going off, like you look at Shohei right now, he's having an unreal year pitching and hitting. So
baseball is just such a different thing, though. I feel like where you could be super talented and just have a bad season as like an 8-year vet. Like everything is so up and down, and you could just be in your head for 2 months and it will tank your entire season. And it's tough to predict in that way.
Speaking of contract years, what do you think of AJ Dillon?
I'm a big fan of him. He obviously reminds me a lot of Jerome Bettis. Just a thick guy that can maul people in the paint. I don't know. They got Aaron Jones back. I was sort of hoping that AJ Dillon would get the backfield to himself, and you sort of get to see him as running back one. But he's always been their short distance guy, and Jones does tend to get hurt for 1 or 2 games throughout the season. He usually does pretty well in those 2 games as a spot starter. So I'd be pretty comfortable having him.
Makes sense.
Him and Cook are around the same ADP. If you guys had to pick between the two of them, which side you lean in?
I think Dalvin Cook sucks.
Oh no,
It's going to be hard with Dalvin Cook.
I meant James Cook.
Oh, James.
Yeah,
that was a panic pick.
Dual tight end premium. Dalton
Yes.
Schultz.
That was probably a horrible pick.
It's a sleeper team format right there.
What do you think of Brian Robinson?
Who is that?
Brian Robinson. I think he's a
Dog.
laid back Commanders.
I liked him a lot. Yeah, he was a dog.
Yeah,
His intro video to coming back.
that was crazy.
You guys
Chills.
are distracting me. I'll take that.
Oh, come on, dude.
The ultimate tactic.
Yeah, he's a hard runner. He can catch out of the backfield. He's pretty much everything you're looking for in a running back. They got Antonio Gibson too, who's obviously a very good running back. So it's like not saying you're hoping for injuries, but at the same time, you're trying to pick a guy that you maybe think is going to be a really good starter if their other guy gets hurt and takes away his carries.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. With
Rashad Penny situations.
Yeah, what's going on what do you think's going on with the Eagles?
At running back,
Yeah.
they've always sort of been like a 3 running back team. So
Yeah.
like they have like Boston Scott and like Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is a very good, like solid running back, but
A healthy Rashad Penny, it always feels like a top 5 talent running back in the league, though, it's sparing when it is, but he's been electric at times.
yeah, he was obviously very good for the Seahawks when he was healthy. So
Gosh.
It's going to be an interesting year in general. Oh, you got Sutton? Damn it. Taking like a lot of the guys I'm super high on.
I know, just taking all of your like TikTok posts right here.
Apparently Elijah Moore is supposed to be some form of breakout candidate, but I saw that he had like a rib injury of some sort, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I don't know how I feel about him anymore.
Yeah,
The talent's there for sure.
Yeah, elite.
I like
handcuff.
Samaje Perine a lot this year because I'm too concerned about Javonte coming off of that ACL and MCL injuries. I think it's a lot worse than people are trying to make it sound. I'm going to go with Perine. So just talk them up, get some more handcuff options here. What do you think of Quentin Johnston? Because there's a lot of question marks around his contested catch rate in college and how he performed against like good defenses, essentially. Anything? Well, I'll let you take your picks here. I won't distract you.
What the?
It's funny. The Chargers, they just have a knack for getting power forward wide receivers. So I would like Mike Williams. Thinking about him and Johnson, they're honestly like the same receiver in my eyes. It's going to be weird though because they got Keenan Allen. He's going to be their slot guy, and then they got Mike Williams, who is injury prone at times, and then Quentin Johnston. Like I said, he's very similar skill set to Mike Williams. I don't think he's as fast as Mike Williams was coming out of college, but
See how it pans out.
yeah, they just got to find out his game and what suits him better. Then
Can do anything.
Yo, can I get your guys' help real quick here? Are you guys going Rashad Bateman or Adam Thielen if you're picking up a receiver right here?
I'd rather take a shot on Rashad Bateman and hope he's healthy.
Yeah, I think that's what I was leaning towards too. I'm gonna go.
I think Adam Thielen's past the age cliff, and as Rooney pointed out with rookie quarterbacks, it just doesn't seem like a good formula for success.
I mean, it seemed like he was past. He did pretty all right last season, though, considering everyone was like he's already off the age cliff last year. Yeah.
I like Jonathan Mingo a lot, but my hopes were kind of shattered in preseason, not getting any targets. Sad boy hours there. Let's see. What does Aaron go with? He's building a unique team over there.
You see Speedy's building the Florida squad.
Is he? Oh, yeah, he is. Hill and Waddle. I don't have faith.
Okay, I'm going with the Bills defense. Well,
Bills defense should be good this year.
Would you take
they
that
got our
or the
boy
Jets?
Kyer. Yeah, I would. I can understand the argument for the Jets, but
I mean, the defensive line is about as deep as you're going to find.
I'll let a kicker fall back to me. I need a tight end. I'm pretty confident Tyler Higbee's the number 2 option in that Rams offense.
Yeah, I think Higbee's in a good – with his ADP, is a great pickup this year just generally, like in all drafts I've been in.
Yeah. Trying to think if there's any other teams that I either love or hate this season that I can't figure out. See, Elijah Mitchell. You think he's going to get some work over in San Fran? I saw he had an abductor strain as of recent. So I've been in the past, but like.
Yeah, he's been good in the past. He's another. It's like Christian McCaffrey's obviously in front of him, and sort of banking on that he gets maybe 8 to 10 carries a game. And hopefully with his speed, he's able to break one open. But yeah, it's like you're just sort of saying a prayer drafting him.
Well, is you ready for this?
Who are you taking? Justin Ross?
Dog.
I'm not there.
I think he got hurt today.
He is – I mean, I think he did. But he is the most talented wide receiver I've seen in person at any level of football, in terms of dominance compared to who was guarding him.
I was a big Clemson guy, but that poor guy just can't seem to stay on the field right now.
No.
Go ahead and get my late round guys here. All right. Fill this team out a little bit.
I like Mooney here. I like Mooney a lot here.
He's going to have some spike weeks, I think. All depends if the Bears are actually okay on offense, which I think, what's his name? Luke Getsy isn't a bad offensive coordinator.
I could also go Tank Bigsby right here, which is just one that everyone likes.
Yeah. Rooney, what do you think about Tank? Do you think he's actually going to take away some of the work from Travis Etienne this season, or is that just been fantasy analysts like myself smoking gas to some degree?
Yeah, I would think so. After Etienne obviously had a big season. The only thing with Etienne is he does fumble a little bit, so that might be something to keep an eye on. If it does continue, then maybe they start giving Tank some more carries to try and avoid the Etienne fumble. But I don't think there's really anything to worry about right now.
Of course, Aaron steals Jaden Reed from me. He watches too many of the streams.
You see, I got that late stack right there. I got Ayuk, I got Debo, and I got Purdy.
I like how you stacking it.
Yeah.
People don't talk enough about stacking metrics.
Well, I feel like all the people. I feel like all the people who win like the crazy,
prizes,
the crazy weekly prizes and stuff are using like the week 17 correlation strat all the time. You know.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how you have to go about it. At the end of the day, is like if you want to win everything, like the week 17 stacking is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because it's like some offenses are just going to give you a ridiculous amount of fantasy points. Like I think a very interesting matchup in week 17 is who is it exactly? The Giants versus the Rams, I think is interesting because I think the Rams secondary is just abysmal this season. I don't think they're relevant. I wanted to target the Steelers versus Seahawks game, but I think that's going to be a battle of who has the better defense. I wouldn't be surprised if both of those are top 10 defenses this season. One of them will like be a top 5.
Yeah,
It's also worth thinking about. I know one of my leagues is 1 week, 2 weeks for the playoffs. So you lose every Cardinal and Commander player during your first week of playoff matchups. So
yeah, like Commanders versus 49ers will be interesting because like if there's a chance that somehow the 49ers suck this season, which I think is a low chance, then I do anticipate the Commanders rolling over that game because I think by that point in time, Jacoby Brissett's starting, Rivera's been fired, Bieniemy has been promoted to the head coach, and they'll be interesting as a whole. All right, let's check out these teams and see how they're looking.
You guys let my boy Graham Gano fall to me.
Eckler, Hurts, Najee, Judy, Rooney building up a fun team over here. The excellent super play of Dalton Schultz, of course.
Yes, the accidental.
I like it. Okay, so you took Tank Dell. He's somebody that I've been screaming from the highest of peaks possible that he is actually going to be relevant this year because I think he's a great receiver. What are your thoughts on him? Or were you just like, he had a nice highlight play?
It seems like it's pretty similar to like when it came to Pickett and Pickens. Obviously bringing in Stroud and Tank Dell. Obviously Stroud is like very open about the Texans getting Tank Dell. So I think that's going to be his guy. He's going to really rely on him to get the ball on quick passes and stuff like that. So I thought it was a pretty safe pick there, especially when it comes to Houston players for right now.
Yeah, I like him a lot this year. He's been getting sniped on me too much in dynasty drafts. And Tajay, I just love as a handcuff because I think he becomes super relevant at the end of the year. Because I don't know, I just don't think Derrick Henry as I pointed out, I do a lot of retention studies, and so what I found was that wide receivers only 4 out of 10 actually stay in the top 10 year over year. It's only 3.5, so 35% of running backs stay in the top 10 year over year. Last year we had a little bit different. It was only one guy stayed in the top 10, which was wild. But quarterbacks is the highest retention rate at 51%. So basically, like if you were taking guys that are like in the top 10 or whatever, you have to be very careful to a degree of like who's potentially going to stay.
Yeah.
Like Eckler's interesting because I like the point of he is on a contract year, but it was interesting to me that like when the starters were healthy, he averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game compared when they're not, he averaged 22.5. So it's like, I think he's a guy who will stay in the top 10, but it's like, is Kellen Moore good? Are we at the age cliff? A lot of varying factors there. Jalen Hurts, I just think was way too underrated though.
But you're taking Bijan at his ADP though, right?
Oh yeah, I'm buying as much Bijan because I look at the young guy who's the best running back prospect since Saquon and like Arthur Smith's system, easy schedule, great offensive line. If they don't give him at least 60% of last year's touches, I will be very surprised. Like it makes no sense to me to draft someone 8th overall and not use them, essentially, which is what everyone at TikTok tries to tell me that they're doing. And I'm like, I don't think that's how the league works, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Rooney's like, you're an idiot, Wells. Definitely possible. Jamar Chase, I like this team a lot. Obviously, I like AJ Dillon a little bit better, but overall, I think we drafted some pretty strong teams here. We'll bring it in and stop sharing the screen here. Yeah, that was fun. I kind of appreciate you taking the time, sitting with us, talking through all of our barrage of questions that we have for you. You know me, I'm going to be constantly just shooting off a billion things, 1,000 miles an hour. It's just been good catching up more than anything. I would love to have you back on and do this more often if you're up for it.
Of course, I love talking football and obviously trying to answer as many questions as I can.
Hell yeah. And then I'd love to get you like once you're in season and looks like you guys are going to be on the road to playoffs because I truly believe that like strength of schedule is one of the most important things to weigh. You guys got the 8th easiest schedule apparently. Great defense, apparently improved the offensive line. setting the fantasy world on fire with what's going on in your running back room. And some really underrated receivers, realistically, and an underrated tight end in that of Pat Freiermuth.
Yes.
Who will be very interesting to watch this year.
It'll be exciting. Hopefully everyone stays healthy, and we obviously get the ball rolling here pretty early.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. But more than anything, we're going to close it out now. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was a great time having Rooney on here. Of course, love having Grant and Jackson. But until next time, peace.